series of programs at PAGYA, a literary festival in Accra. We've been running since Friday night. This is Sunday, and we are going to be bringing the festival to a close in a few hours' time. But things are exciting, things are interesting. I just closed from one book launch. That was a book, a thriller actually, so it's a Ghanaian thriller. It's kind of different from what you'd expect. And I have listened to what he had to say, and I'm jumping into a totally different kind of book. But I'm quite familiar with this book, and I must say, even before we go into the book, that it is an extremely readable, and should I say, interesting and important book because of the perspective from which it comes from. Most Ghanaians who are not in business do not really see what it looks like from the perspective of somebody who is embedded in the business scene. And I think that this book allows us to see what the thoughts are for somebody who is a businessman. And that is exactly what Mo Issa is. He is a Ghanaian entrepreneur, and he has been dabbling in writing for some time, but this dabbling has led to several different outputs, the most recent one being the Midlife Shift. So it's a pleasure to welcome you here this evening, Mo.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
So I'm going to begin with a question that maybe a lot of people would ask, especially if they know you or they knew you, and say, well, what's somebody who is doing business, running an enterprise, what are you doing with books? Because, I mean, as far as we know, those two things are quite different. They are like oil and water. They don't mix. What's happening?
It's a good question, because I'm still asking myself that question. Right? As I've said several times before, I think for me, writing has been like an avenue for me to express myself, because we all looked upon like business people are very strict, serious people, conservative, and writing has been an avenue for me where I could actually express my deeper feelings, my things that have been either covered up or I can't say because of society or my business workings or whatever it is. But the minute this happened, obviously it all starts with reading, and every writer will tell you this. If you don't start reading, or if you don't read, you're not going to become a writer. So really, reading and writing go together. So it all started with reading. The more I read, the more I felt like that is the way I could express myself. Some people paint, some people garden, some people dance. For me, the true expression of myself comes through my writing. I need to pause, think, put words on a paper.
But was this something that you realized from long ago, or did it happen at some point when you were already an adult? Did you realize that you needed to write, or you were a writer from much younger, in your childhood perhaps?
You know, the funny thing is, no, not really. Because I was around 40 years old, and I think we were once at a party. I think it was one of your parties, Nada and my friends here. And we were asking a question, what would you want to be in another life? So I said I would be a writer, and I didn't even have a clue that I really enjoyed writing. So no, the short answer is no, not really.
But you escaped from being a lawyer at a point. That looks like it's closer to a writing life than business.
Escape is the right word, because my lawyer friend here will accept no. I mean, I studied for law. The reality is I'd never worked as a lawyer for one day in my life. So opportunities happen, and I came to Ghana instead of staying in the UK to work there in law. And I know law and writing go in hand to hand. I know that. A lot of famous writers were lawyers. Yeah, but for me, no, it wasn't that.
Now, and because I had read the precursor, and you know, when your poetry book came out, which is I think the dim mistiness,
the dense mistiness of the ordinary, yeah.
Of the ordinary, I found those poems really touching. And at that point, I told you about it, and I suspected that you didn't believe me. but I really believe that some of those poems actually were very, very touching and well written.
Thank you.
Before we come to this, are you still writing poetry?
No, not at all.
What happened?
I mean, honestly, poetry, you have to really be deep into yourself, really, and business life and human life takes over. It's so hard to mix the two because poetry is really I would say, the essence of writing. And then you read all around you, people are so great in poetry, and I look at my poetry, I feel like I'm a child in poetry. So I said, you know what, leave it for the big boys to write poetry.
For some reason, and I'm feeling quite prophetic about this, I think that some years down the line, you might take it up again.
Maybe.
Yes, because looking at this book and the kind of writers that you quote, I see that this is your writing journey is kind of taking off. You begin by saying how you were touched by the death of Ivan Illich.
Right.
And in this book, you do mention that that is more or less how you began to do self-introspection, which is what has led to this book as well. I want you to tell me a little bit more about that entire incident, you know, what made you read that book and how it had such an impact on you. Because I'm sure many people have read that book and it just passed by them.
Yeah, The Death of Ivan Illich by Leo Tolstoy, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, to set the context or the background, I was in Lebanon, and there was a mini war, unfortunately, similarly to what's happening right now. And so I was in a state of where, maybe emotional state whereby maybe the ego is down or whatever it is. So maybe that's why the book had a greater effect on me than other times. But the gist of the book, or the message that I got then, especially because I was searching, 2008, I was searching for whatever you want to call it, purpose or something, meaning. And Ivan Illich, I saw a lot of parallels in his life and my life, because he was a person who was doing well in life. He was making money, prestige. Prestige was a big thing in his life. He was going up the status ladder, and one day he gets an illness. Before he knows it, he's in bed dying, and at the final day, he's questioning himself, what if I've lived all my life wrong? And for a moment there, he sits back and he thinks, you know what? I now get it. I've lived all my life wrong, but I get it. I get it. And he dies with a sort of a smile on his face, like at least he got the gist of it. Even though he died, he understood that materialism, status, prestige doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Because when I was going through this book again,
right,
it actually made me go back and read The Death of Ivan Illich.
Okay.
I had read it many years before, but it really didn't strike me as life-changing, you know. I could see the point. So when I saw the impact it had made in starting off your writing career, I went back and read it. And I could see resonances, but as you say, I think...
Important. Maybe in your life, it's a bit different. You're a Superman, like you work you're a professor, you're a writer, you're taking care of writers' projects, so I think your meaning and purpose are set. You just need energy to keep you going, that's all.
Well, maybe there is a book like The Death of Ivan Illich waiting for me somewhere.
Maybe, yeah.
And one other thing before we come directly into the content of this book is the style of writing.
Right.
There's a precursor to this book, which is just The Shift, which, again, I found it very useful because it was very bare in what it was saying. It was taking your perspectives, giving examples from your lives, and then trying to outline what other people could learn from your life. So your life was the basis of it. But I must say that whilst that book was interesting, this book, the way I put it in my mind, I read the two and I said, well, the first one is by a writer, and the second is by a storyteller. Because this book really, the Midlife Shift, is written with a certain point of view and a certain direction that makes it extremely compelling. So I think that more or less the message is the same, but this is much more powerful. And if you've read the first one, you should get the second one. That's what I just have to say. But would you agree that more or less the message is the same, the trend of the book?
I mean, yes, of course, but the writing, as you said, it's much deeper, because when you're telling personal stories, a lot of emotions are laid bare on the book, and it has to be told when the humans are involved, because the shift is more like prescriptive, like this is what you're supposed to do this and do this. Here I'm saying that's what happened in my life, and I'm saying things that maybe I haven't even said to a lot of close people within my group. I can't, even face to face I can't say it, but on the book I can. So, and of course it took me almost 7 years to write this book. So many different versions as well came out, and it's been well edited, so to say it has to be compelling, because there's a lot of blood and sweat and tears have been on.
Whenever I look at a memoir, one of the first things that comes to mind is, how is the author not afraid, you know? Because you are more or less exposing your life.
Right.
And a lot of the time, what we want to do is to keep things hidden, not to let people know about ourselves. So did you ever face that sort of a question, that you are more or less exposing, laying yourself bare, and how did you deal with that question?
I mean, yes. I mean, several times, even maybe 1 year ago, I spoke to my wife and I told her, you know what, I'm thinking of abandoning this book, because I say things, especially in the final chapters, that I'm sure even my own brother doesn't know. But then I said, the amount of hours I've spent on this book, and the amount of, I mean, the toil I went through to write it, I felt like it deserves to be written. But yeah, I tried several times. I wanted to backtrack. I also had a very good editor who helped me. Every time, her name is Julie Aretz, she's an American. Every time I was sort of scared or backing away, she would sort of like a school kid bring me back in line.
Right.
So yeah, that also, I set up a system around me that helped me as well, so that not to give up, basically.
Okay, so now here is the midlife shift. We begin from a point of crisis, but interestingly, by the time we get to the end of the book, what we find is someone who is more ready to meet crisis, but not that crisis has come to an end. So it's more like, well, this is the first part of the life, and whatever the second part brings, I'm more ready for it, which makes it different from a kind of like telling of a novel where by the time you reach an end, you really have ended in some way. I would like us to just take a reading from a section of this book so that our guests can have an idea of how the writing is.
Okay, great. I have it. But anyway, before I get into it, thank you for that. The ending line is very important, because, as you said, you change whereby you can handle crisis. It doesn't mean the crisis ends. A lot of people, how we are brought up, like in Hollywood, like Hollywood changes from zero to hero. And life really isn't like that. Life is about things are happening to you, and how you see them, how you perceive things change. But the crises are still there. Problems are still there. They're never going to go away. So I'm glad you brought that up. You always have a knack of finding the right line. No, honestly, thank you, Martin, for that.
You're welcome.
What I'll do is I'll start with the introduction, because it's quite short and it sets a scene for a lot of things, a lot of the themes in the book, sorry. Your problems have nothing to do with your heart, but with your head, the doctor said. It was May 2008 when my doctor suggested I see a psychiatrist for my malaise. What I was going through was not heart failure, but panic attacks. It's true. The 12 months leading up to that point were turbulent, but I felt a dissatisfaction creeping into my being well before then. Somehow the fulfillment I used to get from working at my company was drowned by the weight of responsibilities and expectations. I still wasn't as financially free as I thought I would be when I first created my company 15 years earlier. Yes, my earnings helped support a rich, extravagant, and busy life, but I had no safety net. Buying 4 Rolex watches within 18 months wasn't making my happiness last. The more I made, the more affluent my life became. I had become enslaved not by a person or a giant corporation, but by striving for money, prestige, and success. On that night in 2008, on a hotel balcony in Lebanon, with a cigar in hand, I contemplated the doctor's words and could see for the first time myself split into two. First was the extroverted and successful business owner, an esteemed member of society whom everyone thought they knew and admired. Then there was the other person, who no one but I knew, the person who wanted to be alone with his thoughts and had an insatiable curiosity about the mysticism of life, the person who craved a far less lavish lifestyle. It was now apparent that the formula for living the good life that I learned through osmosis was failing me. Striving for success, money, and prestige wasn't giving me the happiness I thought my achievements guaranteed. I had followed the model my father had shown me, what all of his peers and what the wider Lebanese expatriate society had demonstrated regularly. A good life was about hard work, making money, taking care of your family, climbing the status ladder, and enjoying the fruits. At the start of my adult life, I followed it so well that together with the family and friends that I grew up with, we became the talk of town, the envy of many, and the top of the list for any dinner or party invitations. We were wealthy, affluent, and sophisticated, all regularly crisscrossing the globe. As a result, we were dubbed the Millionaires Club. However, by the time the panic attacks began in 2008, I'd become disillusioned, ambivalent, and angry. I'd lost my zeal for my business and started questioning myself and the values under which I'd been living. Why wasn't I happy? Why did the rest of the Millionaires Club seem much more content than I did? These constant questions plagued me. Then as my ruminations and reflections got more profound, I started to ask a more searching question. What if I was living my life all wrong? Maybe it didn't matter what other people thought of my life. Maybe it didn't even matter what I was living according to a self-imposed happiness formula. None of it matched what was true in my heart. As we've evolved from being hunter-gatherers to more sophisticated human beings, our brains and psychological needs have grown. Today, there is an existential crisis that has left many like me feeling depressed, empty, and in search of meaning. The uncomfortable truth is that we go through the first part of our lives in action mode, like rats chasing dopamine hit after dopamine hit, until a crisis beckons us to ask, what if we were all living our lives the wrong way? We all need to sit up at various stages of our lives and ask ourselves if we are on our rightful, authentic path. We so seldom do this. Instead, we allow the busyness of life to numb us into believing that what we are doing is fine. Without warning, we become slaves to our impulses, those desires consciously and subconsciously bestowed upon us by our genetic disposition, upbringing, and environment, the constant media barrage, and the confusing signals of our bodies. The breakneck speed of today's world doesn't make it any easier on us. There are endless options on how to live and a never-ending number of gurus telling us how to become our best selves. There are also easy and accessible platforms for us to compete and compare. Unfortunately, the noise surrounding us has stopped our music's eruption from within. We can all live happier, more content lives full of meaningful experiences and unique connections and still leave a legacy without the need for striving and without the running and exhaustion that comes with it. We can be healthy and have enough money to be free from needing other people, governments, or institutions. We can have a wonderful group of friends and family around us and feel useful by contributing to our communities without feeling pressured to live in the rat race. First, we need to slow down, dig deeper into ourselves, and find out what we want. We must discover the obstacles that stand in our way and recognize the values we want to live by. We must then use those values to inform the kind of lives we want to live. It's not easy, but when we accept that struggle and discomfort are ways to grow and that doing the work on ourselves means removing the old paradigms that don't serve us anymore, we slowly install the habits that can lead us to what we truly want. My story is not a Hollywood rags to riches story, but rather a story of growing self-awareness. This inner journey is long and endless, but it's a human one. As Socrates said thousands of years ago, the unexamined life is not worth living. I got to know myself much better by removing my egoic exterior layer after layer. I share my innermost feelings as a testament for others to see why examining our values and beliefs is imperative. These values are the springboard from which we can clarify what we want and then have the courage to go for it. As I started to let go of the old values that I lived by, I was able to go create new ones that resonated more with my authentic self. As a result, I started to live a more meaningful life aligned with my fresh set of values. My values were now not extrinsically motivated, but more intrinsically driven. Instead of success, prestige, accomplishments, and money, I now craved creativity, presence, simplicity, vulnerability, and authenticity. Instead of allowing my mind and society's influence to affect my wants, and I allowed my heart and body to lead the way. The more I expressed the depth of my soul and allowed my muted voice to speak, the better I connected with people and the world. My self-discovery journey has been long and riddled with cul-de-sacs where old demons pulled me into bouts of confusion, ambivalence, and mild depression. However, because I've failed repeatedly, my path was being self-corrected, just like a rocket shooting from the Earth to the moon. It adjusts its trajectory slowly but surely to land on the right spot. Through this journey, I've come to know what I stand for. I've clarified my values and a particular worldview that has become my North Star. Several guiding principles which include accepting, number one, accepting that letting go of comfort and ease and allowing more pain and struggle in our lives means more growth, presence, and richness of life. Number two, not caring about society's whims, example, status and prestige, and instead focusing on having genuine connection and community. Three, recognizing that money beyond a certain point poisons the heart, that living frugally and simply results in purity and freedom. Four, embracing the ordinary, being humble, useful, and competent, rather than the egocentric concept of trying to be extraordinary in saving the world. Five, keeping the following mantra as a guide. Get into action, do what you love, go for your goals, but detach from the results. Detach from the fruits of your actions. We can only control our actions, not their outcomes. But we should never, never detach from our actions. We lose ourselves if we do. As you follow along on my personal journey, I hope you too will come to see the value in these principles and find ways to adopt them for yourself. You deserve a life free of malaise, free of discontent that comes along with superficial success. But this can only be achieved through a fundamental shift in your mindset and the way you view yourself in the world. Allow me to share my experiences and learnings to guide you toward a deeper, richer, and more content life.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first thing I note is, and I say this in a nice way actually, is the fact of an unhappy rich man. Of course, it then sees that, well, so if a person can be doing well, I mean, in business, financially, why on earth would they be unhappy? And what you are saying is that there are things that are much more important than that. There is a certain sense of looking for an authentic self. You've used that word many, many times. But one would begin to suspect that the authentic self will differ from person to person. You are not pointing at a certain ideal,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yes. I mean, exactly. You have many people who are successful in business and rich and they're happy. And I say that and I mentioned that. And I was quite envious because within even my group of friends, my family, I could see that. They're very happy and they have achieved what they want to achieve. But for me, I don't know what the reasons are, it didn't fulfill me. And I think the only sense of fulfillment I started getting was when I got creative, when I started writing. And it doesn't mean I stopped my business, and as you'll see in the book, my business went backwards several times and I had to readjust myself and focus on it. But for me, all the meaning, all the happiness, all the joy I get is when I do this, when I'm writing. And I'm sure if I tell this to somebody else who wants to make money and will laugh at my face, and I've had that thrown at me several times, right?
Okay, so I'm glad that that comes out, so that it's not like you are preaching a certain sort of mantra that this is the way that you ought to do it, you know. But you actually are just asking for self-introspection to find what works.
I think that the bottom line is creativity. When we create, because even in a business, you can create a business that is a reflection of who you are. And in doing that, a lot of businessmen have created great things, wonderful things to all the world. You'll see everything that we need has been created because it has to be sold, and through business it has to be sold. It has to be something that's effective. So creativity is really the key. And maybe in my business I haven't been creative enough that it didn't satisfy me. It didn't satisfy that creativity thing that I'm looking for.
Well, I do see that towards the end of the book, you do mention that there has been a sort of change in the way you approach your business. I suppose that it means that the learned experience that you talk about in this book has now begun to affect the way you do your business. Has it also changed your life in general? Well, this is because not everybody has read the book, but these experiences that you recount, I mean, as you sitting here, are you different from the one who would have met 10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, I'm less richer, let's start there. And, but psychologically as a person, I'm different because it's the same things that I could be doing maybe 10, 15 years ago, but they make me happier now because I found peace with them. I've accepted a lot of them. And you know the old tale, whether it's Paulo Coelho's book, that the treasure is always underneath the bed or close to home, right? So the same things that I was doing before, maybe I still do now, but I do find much more joy, much more acceptance, and I do them maybe in a different, more creative way that fulfills me.
Well, one of the things that I found in here was the power of switching worldview. So once you begin to look at things differently, and you also have mentioned in the book several instances where things which previously would have let you react in a certain way no longer had that sort of power over you. And for me, again, that was something quite useful to learn, that the exact same situation can have different outcomes simply because of how you look at it, you know. But a lot of the time too, when I was reading this, I was wondering a lot of it looked like going through a religious or spiritual experience. I don't know how you would see it because you don't mention any such thing. But looking at the whole idea of a change in worldview, change in perspective, doing things so differently, looks like someone who is either converting or proto-converting. Did that strike you? Do you think there's any religious undertones to the midlife shift?
I mean, I wouldn't say, because any change, as you said, any change is that it's a revolution. And usually people use religion to do that. I mean, that could be one avenue. It's not my avenue. And in one of the chapters, I talk about an experience I had with magic mushrooms. And I'm sure some of the people here will look at it and be afraid like it's psychedelic drugs. But that was a spiritual experience to me. So definitely, when you go from somebody from A to B, there is some kind of an experience that you have. Now, whether you want to call it religious, for me it wasn't a religious experience, but it was, I would say, a spiritual one, whereby you see things are just bigger than what life actually is. That, for me, is a spiritual experience.
One of the things that I found very curious about that experience, which you narrate so well in your book, is the tree that you saw at the end of the garden. You know, there were many trees that you were able to see, they were full of life, but there was a particular tree that you saw that looked dead in the psychedelic experience. And weeks later, the tree actually died.
You know, when I came out of it, I told my wife that this tree it's not very healthy. We need to do something about it. And it was true, because the roots were not really embedded. It was is it a dwarf palm tree, I think? So the roots were not very embedded. But when I was on these psychedelic, whatever they are, mushrooms, I mean, nature becomes very clear to you. So you see things much more clearly. So I know maybe it sounds a bit far-fetched when people are listening here, but the tree did look sick to me at that moment. So that's what I said. So I think we did some work on the roots.
Yeah, but it died in the end.
No, it didn't die. It's still alive.
It's still alive. You know, I mean, when I read that thing and I sat back and said, well, okay, so this can't be a joke. I mean, the book is a memoir, so there is no reason to put things that are not true in it. But no. I wondered really how much of life we are missing. You know, it did seem to me immediately that we see things, but we don't really see them.
Absolutely.
We just gloss over, I mean, all sorts of things. And of course, I mean, we can make a joke of it that this is something that doctors should do every time they prepare for the day, take a magic mushroom or two so that they can really identify who is sick or not. You know, but that for me was very.
I'm going to send you a picture of the tree. Maybe you can write a short story about it. Yeah, your talent will come out on that short story.
But another thing I learned from this book, and I mean, maybe this book will be my the death of Ivan Illich. But I learned to pay more attention to things. I've always been someone who likes nature and all that, but I thought, well, is it possible to be more particular about it, more intentional? And I can't say that this is because of the book, but this morning, walking down to this place, I had to get here very early. It was really interesting because the sun and the moon were out at the same time. You know, this is around 6:30. So down to this side, you could see the moon, and over there, you could see the sun. And I mean, from a point of view of science, this is a great teaching opportunity for a child and say, well, look, the moon is reflecting the sun's rays. And then I walk down and I see some periwinkles, and then there's this lovely yellow flower. And I was also thinking, and I remembered your book, and I said, well, I mean, these are the kind of things that you are really saying, that we ought to be more aware of our environment. Would you be happy that your book is having this kind of an effect on me?
Absolutely, yeah. Because, I mean, it's about being mindful. The word being mindful, like we rush through life all the time. Everything is rushed. And especially with me, I'm 150 miles per hour usually. So, and that's why I've had to slow things down for me to enjoy life. I can't enjoy it in the fast lane.
Yeah, but of course, so for people who are in the slow lane and feel that they can, and this is what fascinates me about this book and what you are saying, is that for someone, maybe the fast lane is what is going to make them fulfilled and happy. And if that's your thing, then maybe you should go for it. But there are so many learning experiences. And I began by asking whether you were not afraid to put your life down for everybody to see, you know, because it must be a bold thing to do. But you've done it. And I think that at least from the early readers' perspectives, me, myself, I think it's been useful. But what would you want, really, people who read your book to get from this narrative? What would you be happy to learn that your book has achieved?
I think I'd like them to see that even though we can live a lot of our years, maybe up to midlife, following a certain structure that is not really us, we could live the second part of life the way we want to live it. Because no matter what you tell me, I know some people want to live in the fast lane, some people will love the lifestyle of money, but after a certain age and certain time, my feeling is that we need to sort of slow down and appreciate life much more. And if my book gives this message, that if that's the only message it gives, is that in a way, there are two parts. Like, you can press hard on the pedal the beginning years, the first years, but there comes a time whereby you have to look for meaning and purpose. It's not going to be enough. You will never be. I don't think you can be satisfied with just pressing on the gas pedal, going after all the symbols we talked about already.
Yeah. In the first book, the first thing that struck me, and then it's repeated here, was that you returned your Rolex. I'm thinking, well, I mean, let's tell that to the young people of today. People are like dying. I mean, this is status symbol. I mean, but well, you had it and then returned it, and you not only did it, but you now have spoken about it.
Right.
Well, I guess this book like this should be required reading for for everybody, at least because it gives different perspectives. I began this session by saying that it allows us to see life from the perspective of a businessman, how they go through the ups and downs of business. One of the things that it made me understand quite significantly, because you do say at the times when your business was in difficulty and explain the kind of difficulty it is that everybody has difficulties. You know, even the people who we would feel are doing very well probably are going through a difficult patch. And I think that was another thing which for me was quite prominent in this book. But I don't want this to be a conversation between just the two of us on stage. The book is very much a book that is accessible. I did mention that the writing is very, very fluid, very enjoyable, very entertaining. And even though I'm sure, Mo, you didn't set out to do so, there are some moments that are quite humorous in it. I mean, not least the magic mushroom bits when it was delivered to you. But I would like to involve us all in the conversation. If you have any comments or questions for Mo, ISSA, you can ask. You may not have read the book, that's why we've brought so many copies here, with the intention that you all buy them so that he can autograph them. If you have any questions, you can join the conversation. You just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over to you. There's one here.
No. I think your voice can reach.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. So I really appreciate, the point of view that you've put forth today. And my question maybe is very simple, is what do you think your younger self would have wanted to hear in order to make these decisions earlier? Oh, yeah.
That's a good question. I think I keep on repeating it, but not to rush. I spent a lot of my early years rushing and running through things like you have to make snap decision after decision, and in reality you don't really have to. Slow down and enjoy life much more. Too serious. I was running a business young, 26, 27, compared to today's age. So yeah, I would tell my younger self to relax, smell the coffee, the roses, whatever all the lines are, just enjoy life a bit more.
Would your younger self had listened?
Sorry?
Do you think, would your younger self had listened at that time?
Of course not, but that's another question.
Yes, please.
So I don't want to sort of take us to the end, but I think as someone who used to read your column, I read your column for quite a while when you used to write in the Graphic. I used to read it, I think it was Mondays or Tuesdays?
Yeah, Mondays, yeah.
Mondays. I used to look forward to it and read it. And I'm not a great person for self-help books or things like that, but I always read your column. So that tells you that somehow you got the attention of someone who is used to reading fiction.
Okay.
So my question is this. As you've worked through your self-discovery, and you have you've reached, I don't want to say you reached the end of that journey, but you've explored that journey. Do you see yourself moving forward now to write fiction? Because I see your voice very similar to, I don't know if you've read Abraham Verghese, Abraham Verghese,
No.
The Covenant of Water,
No.
which is, you are in for a treat.
Oh, really? Good.
Yes. There isn't a copy here. I haven't seen. I will lend you mine too. It is amazing, and you will find there's actually a character in there who actually does have a midlife shift as well, a real midlife shift. But as you work through that, you talk about the need to write. Can you see yourself moving now to shift to writing fiction? You know, because I think you have a voice that people want to hear.
Right. It's a good question and interesting because I would love to write fiction, but I still feel like I have this imposter syndrome in writing. I don't see myself as I don't see myself as this great writer like the person here next to you. You see, so fiction. Fiction is much harder, I feel, and but definitely I'm gonna have but what I see myself writing maybe like something like Paulo Coelho kind of fiction. It's simple to the because I still feel like it's not gonna be the greatest writing fiction around. So yeah, but definitely I'm thinking about it. Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you. I've enjoyed hearing your story, but I have a question about the shift with your business.
Right.
And so you are in business and connected to people in business, your partners, your family. How did you bring people along for this kind of seismic shift, to go from kind of always on 100 miles an hour, working really hard, and then trying to turn and be a little bit more focused on what's important and your purpose? So how did you kind of bring people along on this big shift?
That's a good question because if I want to be honest, I don't think I was conscious of doing that. Sorry, what is it? Yeah.
Microphone. There's a question, so I'm saying take the micro. If once she's done, I just was alerting once she's done too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was saying I don't think I was conscious of doing that. So, but I can see how my family reacted to it. Let's say my family reacted with me, and they were all very welcoming, appreciative, and they've always supported me, my wife, my children, my friends, my bigger family. So and not everybody's on the same wavelength. Like I have many friends, I won't even mention books to them because they don't read. But to actually consciously do that, sorry, no, I didn't do that. I'm not. It's been more reactive. Yeah.
Maybe I add a little rider to her question. Since you didn't bring them along, how does your interaction with them look now? Are you now more or less like an outcast to them, or are you still able to?
With my friends and family.
Yes, with your friends, the business community.
No.
Yeah.
I'm whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But I've sort of split myself now sometimes. So you'll see. This, and I say that in the book, there's two kind of modes which I'm trying to fuse together. And I haven't done a good job, and that's one of the challenges I have. And I'm hoping with this book, I'm going to start doing the fusion more, like you'll get the writer mode and the businessman mode together. And it's very difficult because the business person has to be the sort of antithesis of a writer creator, because you have to be on it, you have to be ticking all the boxes, you have to, so that's something the challenge that I'm facing, I'll be facing soon, yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. I've enjoyed the talk, and I just wanted to say, as somebody who has made a similar shift, I mean, I'm a writer now, but I used to work in a bank, but I just wanted to say that in response to the question before the last one, that if you are able to be as vulnerable as you have been in writing a memoir, then fiction is a piece of cake.
Thank you. I think so, yeah. But I think with fiction you have to develop more like themes and characters and these kind of things. But anyway, if I need any help, I'm coming to you.
So, hello.
Hello, hi.
And my name is Dora.
Hello, hi, Dora.
I have really enjoyed the conversation. I'm beginning to feel that at a point in everybody's life, we begin to slow down or think that we need to find purpose in what we do, because this sort of resonates with me and with a few other people that I've been speaking with. They want to slow down, they want to find meaning to life, they want to be there for, people and all that. So that's one comment I wanted to make, that I think I'd also like your view as well on that at a point in our lives we feel the need to slow down and, start to reflect a little bit more, look for purpose in what we do, etc. And well, interestingly enough, yesterday when I got home from PAGYA, I wrote this. What makes you feel alive? Are you sacrificing that on the altar of socioeconomics or status? Because in the end, what a pity it would be if you did everything else but lived.
Nice, yeah. I should add that paragraph to my book, maybe. It will fit. Yes. Nee.
Hi, Mo.
Hi, Nee.
I just wanted to say, first of all, that I don't think your doubts about fiction are founded on anything but a passing puff of cloud. You just need to blow, it will go away. Because, I mean, as somebody who came from the corporate world into writing, I think one of the things that you get from business is you deal with people. So actually, you're very good at reading people, and that's one of the skills you need. And you have this wicked sense of humor, so you've just got the right mix for writing compelling fiction. So that's just a comment.
Thank you.
The question, though, is, I also know that running a business is quite intensive, and now writing is very much a part of your life. I'm really interested in how you have carved out that time, still running the business and also being committed to writing, and how that's impacted the time you have for your relationships in your life as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at the beginning, it did impact my business. And my business, just not just because of my time, but I mean, a lot of other consequences, it went backwards. So it's not easy doing both. But over time, what I found is, because I've been doing my business for more than 30 years now, running my own company 30 years. So I've become at this stage, and I'm 56, I can hit the big points. So the main things I can do within 4 hours a day. 4 to 5 hours a day, I'm done. And I have a team that has been with me for a while. So I'm not going to be able, I'll be honest, and I think I can't see whereby you can run a full-time business, you're young and you want to write as well. It's not going to work. It's an either or, because your energy, where energy goes, success flows, they say, whatever. So you have to put your concerted energy in one place, I feel, 100%. But with me, at my middle age, my business is quite mature. I could do it. So what I do is I'm at work from around 8:30, and I leave 3:30 I leave. Then I have a few hours every day, which I haven't used very well for writing. I'm playing paddle all the time, but that's another story.
It's research, it's research.
Yes. Reading people.
Right. Okay, so there's more time for questions and comments, so you can prepare them whilst we do another round of conversation up here. So we now have seen that the book resonates with people. I was going to say at a point, because especially of the comments that Dora made, that probably this is just because we are growing old. I mean, the changes that we are observing is normal. I mean, it's like, okay, it's time to do other things before we die. And so maybe it's not that profound. But is that your thinking? Is it, would this have happened without those key moments in your life, those key indicators that you mentioned in the book? If they hadn't happened, do you feel that it would have gotten to this stage just as an ordinary aging process?
No, it's a good point you make, because somebody told me that as well. When we age, the same thing. We slow down, we sit and reflect. But I feel the difference is intentionality. And you reach a crossroads, like a fork in your life. And we've seen a lot of people who grow up. I've seen in, whether it's friends or family, my parents, are like, you grow old and bitter, or you grow old and happy.
Right.
So I think there comes intentionality, whereby you work with yourself. The self-awareness I'm talking about, it's like a pie that you need to really grow it. You can't remain in that narrow-minded, I'm a businessman all my life, I'm going to die a businessman. It doesn't work like that. Or I'm a golfer, I just stop business and start playing golf, and these are the only two things. How I feel you need to be intentional in revealing who you are. It's a work. It's a lifetime's work.
Right. Now, we've spoken only about one book, Death of Ivan Illich, as the spark that started this writing thing. But you do mention in the book that you're a voracious reader.
Right.
Since then, you've read hundreds and hundreds of books. One of them, which I also feel has had a great impact on my life, are the poems of Rumi, who you speak of quite powerfully in your book as well. Indeed, the first book time I met Rumi was when my roommates, my lab mates in grad school gave me this book. I was coming back to Ghana. I said, this is Rumi, you would like him, he's a very crazy poet. And so the book was lying down for a long time when I was back in Ghana, and then I picked up and started to read. I didn't think he was crazy at all. I thought he was very, very tender, you know. And so when I read he was one of the people that you had read and had an impact on your life, I wasn't too surprised. But I want you to tell me more about your reading and how that is feeding into your development in this new phase.
Let's talk about Rumi first, because with Rumi, we talked about religious or spirituality.
Yeah.
For me, whenever I'm in a crisis and I'll think like I'll see what's happening in the world right now with in the Middle East, and I start to question myself. Then I'll think of somebody like Rumi and how he talks about the soul and how he talks about which part of goodness we should be on. It clicks for me. I don't need to. There's no thinking of whether this is right or this is wrong. What he says is he's always talking about the soul. So it's not about religion. To me, I don't really believe in specific religion, but he talks about the soul, the spiritual side. See you on the other side. I'll meet you in the field of spirituality. It has a ring. It sort of calms me down all the time. If the world is aflame, I read him, and I automatically calm down. So his poems have really affected me. The other books that I've mentioned, or reading in general, you mean?
Yes, reading in general.
Yeah, reading in general. I went through a period where I would read 1 hour every day, early in the morning, first thing in the morning. And now I've slowed down a bit. I read maybe half an hour here, half an hour there. But for me, reading has been profound because it gives us like a viewpoint or a camera's eye view of different worlds and different people. Zorba the Greek, I was mentioning with one of the people over there, had a great, profound effect on me. A wonderful book by Nikos Kazantzakis or something like that. That's his name, Greek guy.
Yeah, I think you referenced it in this book as well. Yeah.
Also, Hermann Hesse, the German writer. I'm sure maybe you'll have some books for him here. I'm sure, right? He's not. So all of his books were fantastic for me. Siddhartha, what's the other one called? I can't remember. Steppenwolf, fantastic, exactly. So Hemingway, even though he's a typical Anglo-Saxon Western bully, but he was fantastic. His prose is excellent. And his life was full of adventure. That's also what I enjoyed reading. So yeah, reading is really, and as I said earlier, reading really helps you with your writing.
Yeah,
I feel like I can't write unless I'm reading. It doesn't work, for me anyways.
Well, I think that for many people, even though my style of writing is very different, there is really that connection. The more you're reading, the more you're writing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's also the case for me. Well, I've been signaled to begin winding down the conversation, even though it's going so well, and I feel that people in the audience have some questions as well and comments. What we can do is to be kind, because that's one of the things that you say in your book, and allow for a comment or question from the audience before we begin to close the session. But I would like to commend this book to you. It is a significant addition to the memoir space in Ghana. I've seen many memoirs, read a few different ones. I must confess that the more popular ones of the last few years that lean into the Kokonsa space. I haven't read them because I didn't feel that they were going to tell me anything really useful. But this one did. And I think that there is a purpose to the honesty in this book. It's not doing anything to try to get you to do something else, or it's not titillating. It's not anything. It's just a really honest telling. And I would like to commend this book to you very strongly. It's The Midlife Shift. And I have with me the author, Mo Issa. Now, as I mentioned, we would like to allow for a question or two, and then we can bring the session to a close if there is any in the audience. Okay, so we will end the session, but Mo is going to be available to take further questions and also to autograph copies of the book which you buy. Yes, I just a quip. I have to say that when you buy the book and the author is available, please get it autographed. It's extremely important because the book then becomes very valuable. Even way down in the future, it becomes a book that people will murder you for. So please get it autographed as well. And at this point, I think I can bring the conversation to a close and allow space for the next session. Mo Issa, I am really very happy.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.